Police discovered that no matter the stimulants you take, cola nut, coffee, ink on your right and paper on your left, going this way, will not stop you from going to sleep. This is how much we have invested in rigging. But they discovered that once you take the ink with a rubber band and tie it on your head, once your hand can come on top of your head to a ballot paper, without stimulants you can't sleep. This is discovery out of illegality on how to cheat ourselves. But then that hurt a lot of other parties at that material time. And people say, when next election comes, I will fight it out and I must emerge. One of the answers I can give you that may shock you is to start by looking at the histories of rigging activities in Nigeria. Rigging brought so many desperados in politics into importing arms and arming their own thugs to fight another party or other thugs across Nigeria. And when it started in the late 70s, nobody checkmated that. And another thing that brought this hopelessness in where people will canvass for, get the support of the people, but at the end of the day, the queuing of people to vote for Mr. A or Party A, at the end of the day will have a contrary result, brought about people becoming desperate to know that we can fight it out. And that's why at any time you have had elections, until this moment, you can quote me, I say, until this moment. And that is one thing I haven't heard Nigerians talked about. You have insurgency, but you never sit down to say, what are the sources of supply of arms into the hinterland and to the wrong hands? What are the sources into the hinterland that is bringing in arms and ammunitions that has created so many unknown armories from north to south? And there are too many of them, and it's scary. Today, there is not a single agency in Nigeria that can give you figures as to an estimate of arms in wrong hands or armories across Nigeria that are illegal, meaning that is not government's own. So at every single time there is election or there was election, you see the agencies were used. Now it's time for us to talk about it raw. Let me give 1979. In 1979, unfortunately, police were used to be able to tilt election elsewhere. And then it was in that process, at that material time, now police discovered between late hours and the early hours of the next day, stuffing boxes is a difficult thing to do that has to provide to all the polling stations in rigging. Police discovered that no matter the stimulants you take, cola nut, coffee, ink on your right and paper on your left, going this way, will not stop you from going to sleep. This is how much we have invested in rigging. But they discovered that once you take the ink with a rubber band and tie it on your head, once your hand can come on top of your head to a ballot paper, without stimulants you can't sleep. This is discovery out of illegality on how to cheat ourselves. But then that hurt a lot of other parties at that material time. And people say, when next election comes, I will fight it out and I must emerge. That idea was into people. There was no reorientation. There was no address to the abuses. Cases were taken to court. The aggrieved were not addressed, were not compensated, were not assured. And another election came. The same thing happened. As far back as all the elections we have had, they all have their own histories. I'm not going to talk about that now, but every single election had had abuses meted to it. And we have gotten that documented. Most unfortunately. Some today are having direct connection with the current situations in Nigeria. Arms in wrong hands, drugs in wrong hands, armor is kept for them as and when the situation dictates. You go and take arms and fight. You fight fellow Nigerians because of political interests, not national peace. So you have people who are looking for power, but from the money they have stolen, from the abuses meted to the country yesterday, and from the bulgy pockets they have, they now finance people into creating more problems, in promoting more causes of insurgency in Nigeria's stability. Some of us are aware of this, and we have documented a lot of history, a lot of activities in our researches, and we believe we can address it, particularly investing in the younger ones, in reorienting them to now be seen as investments for tomorrow's activities in democracy. And people that I have seen conversing for power, who are only interested in the rhetorics, in the fanfare of the office, and then in the opportunities open for them to make bulgier pockets. We have nothing to do with that. It's unscientific, is very inhuman, is unexpected of any person to support such persons and such a drive under any guise to provide the next leadership. The next leadership should be prepared to be laborers, to be innovative, to go into the dust, to be very practical, to abandon the lofty tower and join the people in making Nigeria be. So that when your institutions comes, when empowerment in the real sense of it, against the tiny little peanuts that goes into the hands of people that has no meaning in today's inflation rating, the tiny little amount being given to people actually is, to me, I look at it as him that smokes. Once you buy the cigarette with your money and then lit it on fire and then smoke, and the smoke goes, neither the smoke nor the cigarette will remain at the end of the day. The cigarette will go away, the cigarette will burn out, the smoke will disappear, and at the end of the day, you are left less, and it's also affecting your health. That's the greed in Nigeria. They steal from you, they invest outside. They steal from you, they tell you lies. They steal from you, they misrepresent you. They steal from you and call you names. They steal from you and see you as animals and give you tiny little things and when election comes. They steal from you and present themselves as holier than thou. They are making fool out of the society. Such people are not needed. By definition in any law, such person or persons who have such qualities are regarded as enemies of state. For example, you take any of these countries that Nigerians are always quick to talk about in copying their democracy there from, or laws, or social supportive programs. You take at any of them and you go to display 5% of such conduct as they do in power, they will end up in prison, they will never be statesmen, and they'll be treated as enemies of state. So until such a time where the entire general population of Nigeria will be sensitized to know, these are expectations of leadership at all levels. Anything short of this, be on your feet, kick them out of power. You are not promoting insurgency, I'm not promoting treason, but all I'm saying is what the law is expected of a leader. That's why you see when they come to campaign, and when you see them frowning at the provisions of the law from the expectations of a leader, and the moment a person or persons frown at what is expected of him to exhibit to the people, then get to know that he is one of such deceits and you never can rely upon. Okay. In an exercise which says for me, of me, by me, which is an exemplified definition of greed in Nigeria, most unfortunately. And the second question, it has to do with leadership, correct? Yes. Leadership in Nigeria. Leadership in Nigeria that by your own assessment even, and then by the assessment of every patriot, has failed. The issue of confidence rekindling to people's hope, or confidence or rekindling of people's faith in leadership in Nigeria actually has a bigger question mark today, in that numerous governments came and left. But we at all times material never sit back to, in retrospect, examine the fundamental issues. Number one, let me give an example with budgets alone. If you go back to decades past, there was never a time the elites or any association or associations decides to come together to look at the performance of a government from the point of view of budget performance alone. Like this is July or August. If you look at the year 2022, I don't think there is anybody known to Nigerians that has sat down to examine the performance of the budget so far. And that alone is very detrimental to the country's checks and balances formula. So that is to say that every institution, every organ of government that is involved is just busy doing whatever they like, because nobody sits to ask questions, nobody re-examine what they do. So from conception to performance of budget to the execution of budget in phases as it affects ministries, parastatals, or arms of government, you realize that numerous things are there but very faulty. And then Nigerians are either intellectually nonchalant or lazy when it comes to checkmating their rights, from preparation to bringing it into law, every fiscal budget, and talk less of its performance. In our research, I tell you this today, we've been to numerous ministries directly and in some cases indirectly using our teams. And this took us some 5 years, now 8 months we are into. We went to numerous parastatals to look at the budget and look at the attitude of the ministry or the parastatal in seeing what they do. There are a lot of waste. And I don't think if this is the attitude that we saw, then Nigeria is just there with budget that is faulty, wrongly executed, with greed being the driving force of many. So if from the structures we see there is any executive arm of government and that can operate from the structure that we have seen, like the one in this government of the day, there is no way you can either trace, track, evaluate, or get to know what they do by the day. And what most of these ministries do by the day is a capital shame and is disheartening, very disturbing, I tell you. And there is no way any budget can be seen to be executed, or to say at the end of every fiscal year, you can say the budget has performed at least more than 60% like it is. Even the 60% that we have seen, that it is the yardstick of assessment, is also faulty, because there is no institution standing that can give you an accurate figure of the performance of the budget as far as Nigeria is concerned. So a country that is just riding solo is a country that is directionless. And where directionless is defined in leadership, it is not necessarily the leadership itself, but lack of the capacity of having the checks and balances at every single step of policy or policies of institutions, ministries, parastatals that we know about that are supposed to be seen to be supportive at home, and their collaborators outside Nigeria that will make meanings to Nigeria. So if we sit down, or if as a country we can sit down and take fraction of people, of institutions and ministries to now examine the performance of any fiscal budget that has gone so far, you will be shocked at the findings they will come up with. We have done it, and we know what we are talking about. Modalities of containing such abuses and waste, also we have it in our hands. That's why we have confidence that when leadership comes to our hands, there will be new structures, because we discovered that only in Nigeria, when you conceive a policy, you equally should be seen to conceive modalities of protecting that policy to come to execution. In other countries where the institutions are standing, all you have to do is just to come up and innovate a policy and set it on, and it will begin to operate for and on behalf of the country and the people. The leadership will do little. But in Nigeria, coming up with the conception alone is not enough. But you have to now be seen to follow through with the protective measures through to the channels of actualization for the people and for the country. In the absence of that, you may have the policy, but it may not take an inch from you. It will fail, because there's no driving force from the point of view of having any institution standing.